my name is Kortney Jaworski. I'm the herpetology curator at the Virginia Living Museum, and we are here for Salamander Saturday, which is an initiative set up by the Foundation for the Conservation of Salamanders, FCSal. You can look them up on the web, and we are doing a little bit of celebration of salamanders today as well. So today I'm here with some of our salamanders that are behind the scenes that you might not get a chance to see if you're out on the floor visiting the museum, and tell you a little bit about each of these guys. So we have the animals that live behind the scenes are known as our ambassadors, and basically their job is to help educate people about their species or similar species. So we have some that are native to the state of Virginia. So we have the spotted salamander and the marbled salamander that we'll take a closer look at. And we also have a western tiger salamander. Now this animal, we'll probably start with him because he's very large and happy to be in view. He is a western tiger salamander, so he's actually native to the western part of the United States. But we do have an eastern tiger salamander that lives here in Virginia, but that is one of our native endangered species. So we actually don't have the endangered species here at the museum. We have in the past, but we kind of use this guy as a good representative of those endangered species. That way we don't have to take any out of the wild to educate you. So first things first, whenever you're interacting with any amphibian, whether it's a salamander or a frog or a toad, you always want to use protection, and that's protection for the animals, not necessarily for you. So we are going to put on some gloves. That way any chemicals that I might have on my hands, you know, lotion, soap, things like that, are not going to impact this guy because he does have very sensitive skin. So we're gonna grab a couple of gloves here. Got the lovely purple color today. And I'll take him out so you can get a close look at him. Like I said, this is our western tiger salamander, also known as a barred tiger salamander. His name is Chompers because he loves to eat. And we'll see, he's got, oh, he just took a little chomp at my finger there. They don't have teeth. Salamanders are pretty much, you know, they are top predators in their ecosystem, but because they're so small, they're not really much for us to worry about. But if I were a cricket or a smaller animal, I'd be very terrified. So this guy, hi buddy. This is Chompers. This is our tiger salamander. And you see he is quite a large guy. He is very well fed here at the museum, so he's probably a little bigger than what you would see in the wild. But this is the kind of average body size. So if you were ever lucky enough to encounter an eastern tiger salamander, you would probably want to report that right away to our state biologist, herpetologist, because they would be very excited to hear about that. These guys are incredibly rare in Virginia. And even when they're not rare, so like in areas of the country where these species exist, they spend the majority of their lifetime underground. So you're not really just gonna see them out marching around. The only time that you really will see them out is really right around this time of year. We see a lot of salamanders because it is nice and cool outside, especially in the evenings. And when we get a nice rainstorm, they often will come out of their hiding places and come out to forage and find mates. So we don't typically see it as frequently here in the southern part of Virginia, but especially up in the more northern parts of their range, a lot of salamanders will actually do what's called a salamander migration. And they'll come out in full force, all the salamanders all at one time, kind of that first 50-degree cool rainy night. They'll all come out to find their breeding grounds, which we call vernal pools typically. So these are going to be bodies of water that fill in, they're temporary, and they're really great places for salamanders to lay eggs because they're not permanent bodies of water, so there's no fish, there's no predators in those areas, and they can come out in their numbers and breed and lay eggs and be nice and safe from their potential predators. Good job, buddy. So, you know, the salamanders are often confused with lizards, which are a type of reptile. But one of the big things that the difference between them is their skin. You see how shiny and smooth his skin is. And there are some exceptions. There are some amphibians that have bumpy, warty skin, like toads, but they don't have scales like reptiles have. And that makes them a little bit more susceptible to their environment. So they cannot be in dry environments for too long, so we're not going to keep him out for too long of a time here, because he will start to dry out, and that can be a little uncomfortable for him. They are not protected from things in their environment or on my skin, like chemicals. So any pollutants that are in the habitat can actually go directly through their skin and into their body and make them really sick. So amphibians are really susceptible to a lot of different types of environmental pollutants. Even something as simple as salt going into the environment from our roadways in the wintertime can be really detrimental to them. And they're also very sensitive to temperature changes. Pardon me. So salamanders in general are, an animal worth protecting because they are so vulnerable, and they can often be used as an indicator of ecosystem health. So we're gonna put Chompers back here. He seems to be tired of being out in the open. There you go, buddy. There you go. Put your toes. All right, so we can move on to another one that we have here. These are our spotted salamanders, and they are a native Virginia species. Again, ones that you may not really see unless you get really lucky, but they are fairly common, more common than the tiger salamander for sure. And I'm going to change my gloves because we don't want to, just like we want to protect these animals from things that are on my skin, we also don't want to risk, transmitting things from one to the other. So here at the museum, we do offer enrichment to a lot of our animals, and that includes the amphibians. So enrichment is just anything that we can add to an animal's enclosure that will kind of provide it an opportunity to perform natural behaviors. And one of the pieces of enrichment that we give our salamanders, because they absolutely love it, is something as simple as a wet towel. They love it. It's kind of like a big blanket of like soil or moss that they can cozy up underneath of. So that's why this towel is in here right now. And I believe, last I checked, there was a salamander under here. So let's peel this back a little bit. Oh, I see a little face. Oh, he says no thank you. So this is one of our spotted salamanders. You can see those bright yellow spots on his back. And this is full grown, so for comparison, it's about as long as my hand. So they're really cool little guys. And those yellow spots, while these guys aren't, necessarily toxic to humans, like if I touched him, I wouldn't get sick from it, but they do have a little bit of a distaste, kind of a bitter taste to them if a predator were to try to eat them, and those yellow spots can kind of act as a warning to potential predators. And a lot of amphibians can do that, a lot of salamanders especially, if they're eaten by a predator or attempted to be eaten, they can put off like sticky, bitter secretions from their skin, and it's not very tasty for those predators. So they often have these brightly colored spots on them to kind of act as a warning to those predators. Let's see if I can get either him or his. There's another one over here. We'll see if I can get him in hand. Come here. This is the other one. He's got a little bit fewer spots, so those spots are individual specific, so kind of like a fingerprint. So each animal has a distinct spot pattern, and you can actually use that to identify them individually. So amphibians in general and salamanders are all carnivores, so that means that they eat meat. And you know, it's not the type of meat that you might think of like a lion being a carnivore. They're not going to go out hunting zebras, but they are going to be eating things like earthworms or crickets or beetles or any kind of grub or larvae that they find in their habitat. They will also eat other smaller salamanders if they came across them. They're not really going to be eating much vegetation, so they're really looking for bugs and worms and things that kind of serve as their diet in the wild. Here at the museum, they get a variety of different things like mealworms, waxworms, crickets, sometimes small roaches, variety of different things that kind of make up their diet. This is another native Virginia species. This is our marbled salamander. These little guys, well, I'll get him in hand in just a second. They're relatively small, still bigger than a lot of the most common salamanders that you might see in Virginia, but much smaller than the other guys that we've seen so far. And they're all black with this really cool marbling gray or silver marbling pattern on their back. They're really cool little guys. Same kind of behavior and tendencies as the tiger and the spotted salamanders. So all of these guys are in the same family. And they tend to stay underground most of the time, most of the year, except when they come out to breed. So this little guy, hi, I know, sorry, bud. He's pretty cute. We say they have little Muppet faces. They look like they're smiling at you all the time. We actually have two juvenile marbled salamanders on exhibit now, so the next time you're here at the museum, definitely walk up and check out that exhibit. They are a little shy still. They're only just over a year old, maybe a year and a half now, so they're about half his size, and they tend to stay hidden under their logs and rocks, but occasionally you'll see a little face peeking out right at the front. It's very cute. So again, these guys are not ones that you might see super commonly, but if you do flip a log or a rock or something in the forest and get lucky enough to see one of these guys, very, very cool find. And you know, you can just kind of admire them, take some pictures, try not to touch them too much. Again, their skin is very sensitive to things that we might have on our hands, bug sprays and things like that. But, you know, make sure to flip those rocks back. So if you find yourself in the habit of checking under logs, make sure to put that back, because that is that little guy's, guy or girl's home. And we want to make sure that those cover objects stay as nice, safe refuges for animals like salamanders. We have one other guy to show you. Put him back. There you go, buddy. He's gonna march right in there under his log. We have one more salamander to show you, and this one is really cool. I really like to show this salamander because this is actually the Virginia state salamander. This is the northern red salamander, and if you see one of these in the wild, it's going to be in a little bit different habitat than the rest of the guys that I've showed you so far. These tend to be a lot more aquatic and like to hang out in streams, and they have aquatic larvae and everything that hatch out of their eggs, and typically, when you see these in the wild, they're going to be bright, bright salmon red. They're really beautiful salamanders. They're bright red with black speckling on their back, and they have this tiny little black mustache on their face. It's very cute if you get close enough to see it. Our guy here is actually quite old for a salamander. I think this one is somewhere around 10 or 11 years old, so nice long life here at the museum, and because of that, he's got much darker patterning than a lot of the ones that you would see in the wild. So He's living right here under this log. So this guy I'm not going to pick up because these guys, again, being more aquatic, they are quite wiggly. If you were to see one in the wild, you want to take a quick look at it and be very fast about it because you blink and then it'll be gone in a second. So yeah, this darker patterning that this one has is, again, an age-related trait. They kind of get darker as they get older. I can try to lift him. Well, you can't even see his black mustache anymore because his face is so dark. But right along the tip of his snout is a little black line. It's very cute. These guys, again, because they're aquatic, they tend to have what's called a keeled tail, like the keel of a boat. And that's kind of, whoops, this kind of ridge that runs along the top of the tail, and it's kind of compressed from side to side, like somebody kind of squished his tail a little bit. And that's to help them swim better in the water. It gives them more mobility when they're swimming through the water. So really cool adaptation of these guys. And these ones definitely, the others are very predatory. You know, they eat, you know, insects and worms and things like that. These guys would definitely eat other salamanders if they had the opportunity. They're quite voracious predators. So those are some of the salamanders that we have behind the scenes. You can actually see this red salamander out on exhibit, or you might get lucky to see him on exhibit. They do tend to hide a lot, so you have to peek under the rocks, but he is out there. And, you know, we like to celebrate Salamander Saturday here at the VLM because Virginia is really quite a special place when it comes to salamanders. We have over 50 species of salamanders just in Virginia, and a lot of people have no idea that they even exist or where they might find them. Salamanders are pretty elusive animals, but they're really cool and they play a really vital part in the native ecosystem. One of the things that we do here at the museum that just started last year is a salamander survey project that the herp department started back in October. And what we're doing is going out and surveying for the very, very, very common eastern redback salamander, which is by far probably the most common species of salamander that you'll find across the eastern United States. They're very small. They're only about this big, a couple inches in length. Usually they're dark gray or black bodied with either a red stripe going down their back or no red stripe. So it's really cool. They're actually a species that is polymorphic, which means they have more than one color type, and they either have the striped morph or the unstriped morph. But we are doing a survey here on site at the Living Museum where we flip artificial cover objects. So these are just ceramic tiles that we've laid out in the forest, and we're seeing how many salamanders we find. This past winter was the first year that we've done it, so we'll go back out again next fall and monitor again. We've actually marked the salamanders that we found, and we're going to see if we find them again, see who's surviving, whether they're moving around from tile to tile, and maybe if they're pairing up and forming breeding pairs, things like that. So that's a new project, again, that just started this past October and went through March. And that's kind of the standard activity season for a lot of these salamander species. And we'll be starting that up again in October. So be sure to take a look, keep an eye out for that on our website. We're hoping to open that up to public participation next year. So it'll be a fun time. But yeah, thank you for joining us for Salamander Saturday, and go out and find yourself a salamander.